Welcome back. Let's continue to talk about the price elasticity of demand and how to compute it. In the previous video, we already found an interesting thing, which is when the price goes up, as we said before, from 28 million to 35 million per ticket of blue origin. And then the quantity demanded falls from 10 to 8. We find that price elasticity of demand was 0.8. But when we go the opposite direction, price falls from 35 million to 28 million, and the quantity demanded rises from 8 to 10. Then the price elasticity of demand becomes 1.25. We said this is a little weird, especially when we look at the graph on this downward sloping demand curve. We find that the first case means we're moving up along this demand curve from lower point to the higher point, and the second case is just moving down in the opposite direction, right, from the higher one to the lower one. And if the price elasticity of demand is the slope of the demand curve, then no matter which way we're moving, the slope should stay the same, right? However, the calculation tells us no, it's not the same. And if you take a closer look at this calculation, you would realize that it's because of the benchmark we used. Okay, in other words, the denominator being used. Again, in each case, we use the initial level of quantity demanded or price. Okay, and the initial level is different. Okay, when we move from the lower one to the upper one, or the upper one to the lower one, right? Now, if we already found that problem, then how to fix it? It's going to be pretty easy. We have to use the same benchmark. In other words, the same quantity or price when we calculate the price elasticity of demand, right? Now, how could we use the same one? Like which one we're going to use that will stay the same, okay, regardless of the direction of the movement. Now, an easy way to do this is you find the average between these two prices and average between these two quantities. On the graph, that means you find the midpoint price and midpoint quantity, and always use them no matter you're moving up or moving down along the curve. Okay, so this is what's called the midpoint method. Okay. Now, let's recalculate this. Okay, let's do the second example once again with this midpoint method. Again, the elasticity is defined the same way. Okay, percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Okay, and here in the denominator, you would find that instead of using initial level of quantity and price, we used midpoint quantity and price. So the subscript M stands for midpoint. Okay. Now the midpoint quantity is going to be 10 plus 8 divided by 2. Okay, which equals 9. Again, this is simply the average quantity. Okay, at the midpoint between the two levels. And we do the same thing for price. 28 plus 35 divided by 2, so we got $31.5 million per ticket. Okay, now let's recalculate the percentage change in quantity. Remember, the quantity in the second case goes up from 8 to 10, right? So we use final quantity minus the initial one, which gives us 2 divided by 9, so it's going to be 22%. The price drops from 35 million to 28 million, right? So we're going to use the final level, again, 28 minus 35 divided by the average or midpoint price, 31.5. So we got 22%. Minus here means the price is dropping, right? Now let's put this back into the formula of elasticity of demand. And we ignore this minus sign. As we said before, we only care about the absolute value, okay? So what we got here is 22% over 22%. So elasticity becomes 1, okay? Now, if you use the same midpoint method to recalculate the elasticity for the first case, the first example we discussed in the previous video, then you're going to get here 8 minus 10, right? Because that was the opposite case. Then it's going to be minus 2. Then here you're going to get minus 22%. Remember, denominator stays the same, right? For the price, it's going to be 35 minus 28. So you will get 7 here over 31.5. So it's going to be positive 22%. And you plug this back into here, you get the same elasticity of demand, which is 1. Okay? So problem solved. All right? And so the midpoint method is pretty popular in economics when we calculate the price elasticity of demand. Okay, so this is the way we come up with to make sure when we move along the demand curve, okay, between the 2 points, we're gonna get the same price elasticity of demand regardless of the direction of the movement, or put it in a different way, regardless of the change in price. Okay, it's an increase in price or decrease in price. It doesn't matter. Okay, we're gonna get the same answer. All right, so that's here we can wrap up the discussion of computing the price elasticity of demand. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to discuss is the determinants of the price elasticity of demand. Okay, what are the determinants or factors that would affect the price elasticity of demand? Here we're going to use the airline tickets as an example. Okay, so we're going to give you several examples. Each of them will tell you, one important factor or determinant. Okay. But here I want to encourage you to pause the video and think about this by yourself. Okay, what are the factors you believe it will change the price elasticity of demand for airline tickets? Okay, in other words, when price change, how much the ticket buyers are gonna respond? Okay, that depends upon what? All right. Okay, now let's come back and talk about these examples, okay? So the first example is a comparison between a flight between Chicago and St. Louis and a flight between New York City and Hanoi, the capital city of Vietnam, okay? So which one you believe is going to be more elastic, okay? Which one has, more is more sensitive or more responsive to the change in price. Okay, again, you can pause the video and think about it. All right, here you would find that the flight between Chicago and St. Louis is going to be more elastic. Okay, why? Because this is a short-term, the short distance flight. Right? So you would find that, if the price changes, then some passengers, not all, some passengers may choose to travel by car, right? They drive themselves. Or they can travel by train. Okay, so they have other substitutes, other alternative options to go with, right? However, the flight between New York and Hanoi, there's no other way you can make it, right? So there's no substitute or alternatives available, okay? So here we already find the first determinant. We're going to say that elasticity is higher when close substitutes are available, okay? So availability of close substitutes, that is the factor, that will determine the price elasticity here. Now the second example is, let's compare gasoline versus jet fuel. Okay, jet fuel would be used for the airplanes. Okay, now pause the video and think about these. This one, I guess it's relatively straightforward, right? The price elasticity of demand for gasoline should be more elastic, right, than the demand for jet fuels. Why? Because we all, at least the people living in the United States, need to drive on daily basis. Okay, grocery shopping, work, sending kids to school or picking them up, stuff like that, right? We all need to drive. So the gasoline is a necessity for many people, okay, in the US. Jet fuel instead is not, okay? So jet fuel, the airline are gonna purchase it, but remember, if the jet fuel price goes up, and then if they increase the price of the airline ticket, then we probably would, for example, choose different ways to travel, right? Or even cancel the entire travel plan or the vacation plan, right? So again, here, the elasticity is higher for luxuries than the necessities. Okay, so in this case, as we said that, gasoline would be an example of necessities, and jet fuel would be an example of luxuries. Okay. All right, the third example here, morning flights between New York and Hanoi versus any flight between New York and Hanoi. Again, pause the video and think about this. Now, you would find that if you have to buy the morning flights, and when the price change, then you probably would not have many other options, okay? And because again, you have certain time window you would like to fly, okay? However, if you want to go, if you could go any flights during the day, okay, like even the red-eye flight, which would be extremely early in the morning, or late night, or the afternoon ones. So you would find that any flight between the New York and Hanoi is going to be more elastic. Okay, when price change, then you can switch to a different flight for a cheaper, a lower price, right? So here we would say elasticity is higher for narrowly defined goods. Okay. Now in this example, again, the morning flights are going to be narrowly defined because you have a specific time window for your travel plan, right? And any flights, it's going to be broader, right? Again, we're still talking about this, flight between the same pair of cities, right? New York City and Hanoi. But because you narrowly define this, what you want to purchase, so you are going to be relatively inelastic. Okay, so here we're going to say the definition of good and market would also affect the price elasticity of demand. Okay, now the fourth and last example is a flight between New York and Hanoi departing Tuesday. Okay, the upcoming Tuesday versus the same flight departing Tuesday in July of next year. Again, pause the video and think about which one is more elastic. Now, this one, again, is relatively more straightforward. You would find that the same flight departing July of next year is going to be more elastic. Why? Because it gives people more time to change their mind. Right? So if it departing next Tuesday, you don't have many other choices, right? So everything, probably you already booked the hotel, for example, in your destination city, right? Or you have, already made the appointment if it's a business trip with your clients, right? But if it's next year, then you get plenty of time to change all of these plans, right? Or if this is, again, the vacation, you can even cancel the vacation, right? So here we said the elasticity is higher in the long run. Okay, so the time horizon is another factor.